Today's guest is Olympia Yarger, founder and CEO of Goterra, where we talk about swapping cattle for maggots, tackling Australia's waste crisis, and what it takes to scale a first-of-its-kind climate tech business. This is the Mucky Middle. Thank you very much for joining us in the Mucky Middle.
It's exciting.
I guess what I like to start with is, what did young Olympia want to do when she was a kid? Like, what was that thing that sort of, really sparked your interest as a kid?
Farming.
Farming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you always wanted to be a farmer?
Just wanted to be on a sheep and cattle station, working all day, doing very mundane things. My opinion of that work was that it was hard, heavy, sweaty things, moving animals around, fencing. That's what I thought I would be doing for the rest of my life.
Were your parents farmers?
No.
No. You just that was okay.
Yeah.
And so how do you go from wanting to be a farmer to what you're doing now with Goterra?
Well, we were still farming in the early days when the technology wasn't completely ideated. I had wanted to come, when I came back to Australia from the US, I wanted to farm, and buying an actual working agricultural farm was a bit of a barrier for where we were financially. Mm-hmm. So it was the sort of, you can get 120 acres with a house mortgage approach, but a farm that size is unlikely to be very sustainable as a business. So we just looked at how other ways of farming, and insect protein was sort of just coming into the news at that time in 2015. So, farming maggots is actually just farming like anything else. You're just making protein. It's a different
just condensed? It's like your farmyard's become a lot smaller?
Yeah, well, your animals have, but ironically, because there's not a lot of them, they're not very big. You've got to have quite big facilities to grow lots of them. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I was just focused on producing that kind of protein and following fairly conventional farming mechanisms to do so. Yeah.
Interesting. And so just became kind of a necessity that you organically sort of jumped to smaller creatures?
Yeah. Well,
how do you get there? Tell us the story.
Insect protein is comparable to soy or fish meal as a protein source for poultry aquaculture. And so the idea was, we'll farm these maggots and it'll offset the feed costs for a poultry business, which would in turn make the small holding farm enterprise more efficient, more successful. So that was the first idiot, didn't realize what I was doing moment where it's like, this is just farming. Mm-hmm. And you would spend 10 hours farming a maggot just as much as you'd spend 10 hours farming sheep. Mm. And so then it was like, okay, well, we're farming maggots. That's fine. Let's do that. And then ironically, there are two slides that most climate tech or ag tech founders will put up for an investor. And one is that we are facing a crisis of our time and climate change is affecting our world. And then the second one is that the climate change is affecting our ability to produce food, and we're going to run out of food. We'll have a food production shortfall of about 20%. So it was like, okay, well, if you can farm insects and they eat food waste, then that supply chain, the waste isn't going anywhere, has no supply chain, and so you're not taking from one resource to create another. Sounds like a circular economy, should be a thing, off we go. Mm-hmm. But again, when you look at what's failing in farming today, it's the transport distance of feed to the protein. Mm-hmm. And so ironically, when you start trying to find enough waste to feed a lot of maggots, you have the same problem where the proximity of waste to where you have your maggots gets used up, and then now you're driving further and further away to grab more waste. So it's like analogous to the existing problem, but with just a different face. And so then it's like, well, cows and sheep aren't the same as maggots. They don't mind being, maggots don't mind being locked in a small room with lots of their mates. Yep. And so maybe we can put the maggot feedlot closer to the waste instead of the other way around. And so that's sort of like, I guess, the evolution of how Goterra ended up with a box of maggots underneath the basement of Lend-Lease's Barangaroo.
And so how many facilities do you have now?
We have 7 sites now in 4 states.
Yeah, amazing. And how's it going?
We are in an interesting and exciting time in waste and in infrastructure globally. And so anyone that's building infrastructure for a circular economy is in the best world, because you have excellent product market fit. You've got customers with true needs, not sort of washed needs, greenwashed needs. And if your product does as it says on the tin, then you are doing very well. So we are in a unique place where we can't keep up with customer demand, and we're sitting on contracts now that are almost nearly a year and plus old, waiting to be able to fulfill them. And so we're just in a capital problem, which is not a bad problem to be trying to have. Most venture startups find themselves in a different place with the capital, but not the product market fit.
Not the product market fit. Interesting. Surely that makes it easier to sell for VP? You're laughing?
Look, I think, when I first started this business, climate tech was a brand new thing. And I love analogies and metaphors, so you're going to just have to hold on for this hour. But it's similar to when counterterrorism became a thing, and we all talked about it. And then the courses on counterterrorism turned up, but they were just courses that explained it. Now, if you do a course on counterterrorism, it's a course on how to execute it. Similarly, in the world of like startups, that when we started with climate tech, it was an idea. Climate tech will look like this, it'll do this. But the funds that were looking to invest in climate tech had only ever invested in SaaS. And so their thesis for investment and their mandates for investment, the promises they made, their LPs, were not analogous or aligned up with what climate tech was going to be, which is hardware. And then you add the second layer of infrastructure, and that word to venture tends to equal solar farms. High capital intensity, slow return on investment, not 10x. And so there's just too many similarities to what is big and slow and not a lot of money, to the things that are connected to climate tech innovation. And so it does make the pool of investors that are truly able to and understand investment in climate tech are limited, so the pool's smaller. And then, of course, I think what I consider one of the greatest challenges is globally, if you ask anyone, to a person, they will have a different opinion of what a climate-changed world is.
Right.
And so that means then to a man or a woman, we are completely all individual on what will win in that climate tech world. And so now you've got layers of belief that are quite difficult for climate tech founders to navigate, and we find ourselves in that trap often.
And how have you managed to, I guess, get that stopgap on the way?
I think I speak to a lot of climate tech founders about this. There's a couple of ways you can do it, right? So you can make a play for get one really great customer and just drive it. And for certain industries, that'll work really, really well, where there's one customer that really needs this product that'll take all of what you can make. They've got enough brand and you can really just get after it. There's the second layer of that is sort of try and be super scrappy and get a prototype to market as fast as possible and manage then the strategy of growth around the investment narrative. We did that to a degree, but I would suggest that potentially we went a little too fast on deployment. But we got caught up in 2022 and the crash and like it's, you could go on forever as to the rationale in hindsight. But I think inherently what we've done is we have a product that works in market. We've built an entire value chain, and I think that often gets missed in the narrative of true first-of-a-kind tech. The founders have to build their entire value chain. We've done that and still hit the million ARR milestone with less than 30 million Australian in funding. And so we just go to bat on those merits. You can argue back and forth on, at this stage, you should be at 10 million ARR. I think that's a fruitless exercise for founders to get into. And they are generally just stage gates for investors to sort of, let you know that they don't understand where they'd fit right now. And so it's time for you to move forward. So we just sort of move past that and just keep playing our own game.
And I guess back to your earlier point, it's very different from a SaaS product, or, I guess your goals in terms of impact are also quite different.
Yeah, like SaaS is SaaS is not easy, and I don't want to detract from the efforts and work that SaaS founders do, but the pattern matching is very easy to deliver, right? So X number of users with X number of investment equals success.
Input, output.
Correct. And so then it's just about product and marketing. For first of a kind, climate tech, circular economy stuff, where the technology tends to not be a widget that makes an existing thing do a thing.
Yeah, so you don't really know how to buy.
Yeah, so it's
product,
like it's never been here before,
Yeah.
so I can't match it to anything. I can't determine if because this then that.
Yeah.
And so then you've got this number of barriers to belief that you've got to cross, and then again, I think this challenge of owning your value chain, because if you think about Goterra at the beginning, we had to own the production of our own insects, the manufacture of our machine, the ongoing design of our machine, the marketing and sales to our customers, the management of waste, and then the development of 2 products for offtake sales and that market and industry. So I was part of formulating the regulation for insect protein and for us in Australia. But who's doing that in their spare time? We got it passed in 2019, so great. But it's sort of interesting where that sits in the check mark of stuff you should do. It's not. For me, it's I did this federally massive thing that's now globally recognised, and everyone's like, cool. So how much have you sold though? And I'm like, all right, well, just give me a second. And so every time you cross a bar, you have to expect that bar to be lifted. And I think sometimes in climate tech stuff, you can feel like you're in a Sisyphean world where that your accomplishments are actually becoming a rod for your own back, because everyone takes it for granted that you've achieved what you've achieved, but they're still trying to figure out why you look like a pink elephant in a herd of grey elephants, and they don't know what to do with you, and you're like, I'm still just an elephant. So it's a tough, I don't know, it's a fun problem to be solving. I think the challenge in the Australian environment is our risk appetite is so low that it's not commensurate with the innovations that we're driving, and so we're this age-old problem where we're like, how did we sell off Wi-Fi without any kind of royalty is actually repeating itself in Technicolor today, and we can't figure out why. And it's just because of that barrier, I think.
And is the government assisting in a lot of these things? I noticed that you have some partnerships with the City of Sydney and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I have very different opinions about the Australian government to some of my peers. I've found Australian government so incredibly engaged with driving an agenda for Australian sovereignty and industry. I think where things get challenging and stuck. So if you think about the federal legislation piece and the regulations around livestock feed, that was an 18-month process. Animal Health Australia put together all the people that needed to be in a room, stock feed manufacturers, everyone, all the state vets. We did a working group. I designed the flow chart. The state vets reviewed it, lots of peer research, approved. And they sat it in underneath their frameworks, and we moved forward. That's not the case across the world, right? That is such an efficient way of managing engagement. What I think gets challenged in the startup world is investors go, does government approve it? Founders go, okay, now my job is government regulation and my value chain and designing this thing and managing your expectations.
Too much.
Very hard and very early when this has to all be proved. And so the amount of investment you've received to do that work is limited. I did...
The math just doesn't add up.
Yeah, there's no person that sits there as your government relations person at a seed stage to do this work. And so then when you go to government, you're coming with more of a, help me make this legal, instead of, I think this should be legal and this is how. And so, at the state level and at the city level, government knows what it needs, knows how it needs things to work within its own organisation. And I found them very engaged and helpful to be, no, Olympia, you can't do this. No, this is not okay. Here's what needs to be fixed for this to be right. I think then at the federal level, the challenges around engagement with grants, like there's always lots of criticism, but there's also Senate estimates. And I think Australia forgets its own, how critical it is of any error by government.
Yeah.
And so the expectation that government can just easily act as a venture capitalist is
Not real.
not in our country, do you think?
Yeah.
If there was a federal fund that had $1 billion and they made $100 million bet on something that looked really great and it halfway failed and needed to be taken over, we would be embarrassed and angry and we'd snatch that money straight back. And we wouldn't go, oh, well, we got that far, that's cool.
Yeah, we don't have that safety net of being able to sort of try things and let things fail.
No.
Yeah,
and we think $100 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Personally, sure. But it's not like in the world
Yeah.
of government, $100 million bet to try and manage the sovereignty of Australia or its economic well-being moving forward.
No.
Small bet.
I mean, it seems odd in contrast to kind of, the amount that they spend to prop up, fossil fuels and all that sort of thing. Whereas if you'd spend the same money on things like Goterra, then we could actually be transitioning much faster.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily blame government for that.
No.
Because I think...
It's also the public perception.
I think our public perception... Like, the vilification that would occur at any misstep, I think we're our own...
We just need a stronger lobby group for climate tech.
Well, you'd have to not call it climate tech so that people don't get upset, you see. You'd have to call it something else.
Reducing costs down the line for ordinary Australians.
Can you turn that into an acronym?
I'm sure we can.
Yeah.
I'll send it to the copywriters.
Please, yeah.
So I guess give us kind of like the pitch on Goterra. Like what is Goterra?
We are waste management infrastructure that distributes the processing of food waste. So basically, we've a modular unit that has a unit of processing capacity, like a solar panel, and you can deploy one of them to do processing on site or at a smaller location, or you can put 50 of them in a room and do a lot of waste all at once. Unlike a landfill or an anaerobic digester or a composting facility that require really large tracts of land and tend to have to be positioned outside of CBD. We can be positioned inside CBD. So we have a site at Wetherill Park that can do 6,000 tonnes of waste processing. It's right next door to an Asian food importer and an electronics importer. And we're just sitting in the middle there in a warehouse and nobody knows we're there. And so...
Now they do.
Not which one, though. Feel free to triangulate. There'll be a lot of geocaching going on. But, that's a unique and different approach to waste. And the ability to have processing on demand is something that we really need, particularly in our cities, because... processing capacity is the focus. We tend to worry the most about processing capacity. Do we have enough processing? But if we have enough processing, but the transport to that processing is far, then the cost is high and we're all back where we started. And so keeping processing as close logistically as possible is the name of the game, and that's what we do.
And then the output of that then becomes feedstock?
Correct. So the maggots so our tech stack is biological software and hardware, and they have to work together. If they don't, then that is bad. The insects do all the consuming of the waste, and they turn themselves into high protein little peoples, and then we take those insects and we process them into poultry feed, and then the manure of those insects are sent to agriculture for fertiliser.
Wow. Okay, so you have two outputs.
Yeah, so we make money on the front end as a fee for service, and then we sell our offtake on the backside to agriculture.
Yeah, awesome. And has there been, I guess, what are the biggest challenges in terms of selling the product itself?
That doesn't sound busy enough.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, is there squeamishness around?
Oh, no.
I mean, we've done a lot of like FOGO campaigns. And,
Oh,
so I'm in that space, and I know what the end consumer, has issues with their green bin, sometimes having maggots. I'm sure these conversations happen with...
Yeah, so humans are so weird. We care so much about waste, and we're like, don't want it to smell, we don't want this, we don't want that, don't like it smelling. They want a very clean approach to their
Sanitized.
nasty things. Yep, we want it to go away. So we don't have a lot of connection to the customer at that front coalface. That is, here in the City of Sydney, we do 22,500 households. That is all on the City of Sydney and the fabulous team there to manage. We take that waste and process it, and everyone's very happy about that. I think we provide a connection to customers, to agriculture that feels more intimate. It's compost and it goes somewhere. It's feed for a chicken that feels more connected, and we can share those stories of the farms that are using the product, and that feels good to people and helps them engage with being better recyclers. There's no squeamishness on the offtake side. Farmers are not squeamish about that stuff. It works, it does a great job, it improves poultry health, it improves egg quality, and it saves them money, so everybody's winning. What the challenges are, again, comes back to the value chain. So we have to own the processing capacity for that part of the business at this small stage. And that means I have a 20-metre microwave that I have to own and operate and process all these larvae. That's a fairly big undertaking. The throughput capacity is really low comparative to how much we make. And so we're just always not able to produce enough. So for us now, it's about getting our volumes to the size where we can tap into it, agricultural processing. But that's industrial scale. That's a couple of 100 tonnes a week, which we're not there yet.
And so would you have this kind of like hub model where you have these different industrial complexes with the smaller units being sort of transported to them and back and forth? So we have inverted the Australian agricultural system. So if you think of that, Wagga is an industrial an agricultural hub, Dubbo, Orange. What we've done is similarly, we've put our hubs in the regions, so where the processing happens. And that means the protein, the farmed feedlot stuff comes out of our boxes back to Canberra. And then we process there, and then it's distributed back out to agriculture around the Canberra region. And then as we grow, there's another site going into Toowoomba and one into Shepparton, and we continue to replicate that model. And again, that means that the transport miles for the offtake is still low. It's once it gets to Shepparton, it doesn't need to go any further. It can be distributed right there. And that then creates really strong sovereignty for those states around feed. Yeah, awesome. And is that also a piece in terms of like reducing carbon? Is there an element of that in terms of like
it's a byproduct of a more efficient logistics chain. We don't try. I think it's really important in climate tech to not focus on the buzzwords that drive folks. Carbon matters, emissions matter. Doing better by soil matters, all of those things matter, but what matters the most is being most efficient, because adoption is king, and I care most about people adopting practices that drive change, and so that's money first. So anywhere we can reduce the cost, and logistics is going to be one of your greatest costs, then we are solving for the customer, and that means the adoption increases, and that's where we focus. And ironically, when you do that, then your product is just better anyway, because less carbon miles is better for the environment.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess you're playing 4D chess. Lots of
just chess.
Yeah, well, yeah,
with a lacrosse stick.
With a lacrosse stick, you got a lot of things going on to try and meet at the right point. What was it that made you want to throw yourself and everything behind this idea?
It's climate and Australia specifically. I was in the US for like 14 years and I wasn't prepared for how much I would miss home. And it wasn't like family and friends. It was just this country, this place, the way it looks, what it's like to live here. And when I came back, it was so discouraging to see how hard Australian farmers were having to work to turn a profit, to deliver on promises, and make good food for Australians. And I found the contrast between the American really cheap food and the abundance of food, but the lack of fresh food, comparative to Australia's beautifully produced food that felt restrictive and sort of almost getting costed out. And then climate, for me, is sort of the only thing I really care about from a personal perspective at the moment. And I it's one of those things that
the Venn diagram.
Yeah, it's just a massive circle and everything's inside. I just can't. It's one of those once you see it, you can't unsee it moments, and I just have this very pervasive sense that I will look back and think of all these silly little things that I could have done that I chose not to do, and will have regretted them in light of what our future looks like. And so every day sort of that sits there, and so it's a combination of both. I want to give Australian farmers an opportunity to not rely on imported feed the way we have to. I want to contribute to better soil structure and better soil health, and I want Australians to have some sense of cohesiveness around that in a way that connects city to farm and farm to city, and still drives an economic return for everyone.
I mean, it is a remarkable kind of circular, quite really like...
We are the best circular economy innovation out there. And I say that without any reservations.
No, it's very cool. And you mentioned that climate moment. Was there a particular moment where you were like...
Yeah, year 8.
Year 8? Yeah.
Oh, Bob Hawke. I was year 7. I think it was Bob Hawke was still in then. We got... greenhouse effect was just on the radar at the time, so 89. We watched a documentary at school, and it was all about what the greenhouse effect was going to do, and it gave me this like horrible sense of foreboding, and since then, which is a fairly long time ago, I like have this like hypersensitivity to weird weather. So like anytime it's weird, I'm like, what's that mean? Like, I'm hyper indexing on things. And
what else can I be doing right now?
Yeah. Is that too much rain for today? Like, and so
gonna cut back on my milk today.
Yeah. It's really that'll be a shorter shower. Yeah. And then that was interestingly challenged when I went to the US, because like silly things like their sense around water is very different to ours, and I didn't have that perspective. So I'm in Texas and everyone's just flinging water around like it's crazy, and I'm like, has it rained in like 40 days?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, and they're all like, wee. And nobody cared. Like they were just like, and I'm
just
like,
abundance.
Yeah, and not a tank on a roof anywhere, like not a single one. And that, like those sorts of things just stick out to you after a while, where you're like, I think you guys are missing.
We
like,
had a different childhood. Yeah. Mum coming in is like 30-second shower.
Yeah. Or the
dam's low.
The very little sprinklers,
that
hardly get you. These guys are like 4 hoses and all sorts of stuff. So it was things like that, and then people would be like, oh, it's a dry summer, and it was raining like every other week, and I'm like, what's dry to you? And so and then coming back home, we came back in 2015 or late 2014, and so 2015, 2016, the drought was still going, and that comparison was just because we left North Carolina in a dry spell, and it was just green and stuff flinging around, and then we come home to Australia, and I'm like, no, this is dry. And it always felt to me that Australia was actually kind of this canary in the global coal mine, even though we talked more about the Pacific being that. I think Australia's weather patterns are so severe from the beginning that we are experiencing stuff
either too much or too little
in ways that matter, like decades long of too little is a lot, right? And the resilience of Australian agriculture to manage that is impressive, but we, as Australians, we don't actually think about it. We're like, oh, it's gold coin donation time because apparently there's a drought somewhere, and we throw some shekels at it and we keep going.
As long as the food keeps coming.
But Woolies will still have stuff, I'm sure. It'll be fine. So I think, it hasn't ever gone away.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Unfortunately.
Throughout the process of starting Goterra and kind of where you are today, what was kind of like the biggest pinch me moment of sort of like, yes, we're getting traction, this is the right thing?
We deployed the first unit to Lend-Lease Barangaroo in 2020, like middle of COVID madness, and that was hard going and tough. Like that's like getting your innovation into Prince Charles's toilet. Or King Charles now, sorry big fella.
I think he'll be okay.
When you're listening.
When he's listening,
Yeah, and just that scrutiny of such an impressive customer watching you fumble about with blocked things and breaking things was really hard on the old imposter syndrome. But then we got, the city of Albury and suddenly, all the things that I had been saying to investors, like, no, we'll integrate. Like, that was something I kept saying, this will integrate in a way that's really enduring. Customers will want our infrastructure to be part of their world. And when that happens, we stay forever.
Yeah, I was going to say it's pretty quite sticky.
Yeah, and everyone was like, I don't know if that's going to be true. And then it just started to be true. And so that kept happening. And so by 2022, I was like, oh, we've done it. Like, it's not stopping. Like, people are still wanting. And really then it just came down to our ability to execute on that. And so, the challenges didn't stop, but the demand has only ever gotten bigger.
Well, that's, I guess, do you find that is one of the things that keeps fueling you?
Yeah.
I always find when I'm talking to other founders, it's like, there's always something that sort of, it is hard work being a founder, and you have to be kind of the power plan of the entire business. Yeah. What is the thing that powers you?
When you realise that the tech does what you said it would do, and then and all of the other parts of validation are done, which is where we're at today. And so now it's just turning on our network, right?
Just scaling it up.
Just get to size. That's when, like, you can't stop fighting then. That's like getting to the bottom of the valley and having only 4 guys in front of you and going, well, I guess we go home. That was a bit tough, right? Like, you just have to keep moving forward then. But I think what gets really hard is the constant calibration between the company's success and the investment success, and sort of perceptions of what is success are different on either side of that fence. And so you're sort of like, but I know it works. And they're like, yeah, but this is our marker for believing that's true. And so we're not sure if that's real. And so I think, that never goes away. And I don't know if it will there'll probably be some stage where that stops. But I think for a lot of startups that carries through for a while. Because there's only ever more, right? Yeah,
and because of the way that you have grown the business, does that mean that you've been able to? I know that some startups, they get a huge amount of investment, so they have to do everything really, really fast because they need to then pay that back. Have you been able to actually move at a slightly slower pace, but you have more control and you're sort of doing it in line with the investment that you have and growing a business that is meeting those expectations and not sort of running ahead of kind of where you might naturally be?
No.
No? Okay.
No. We have moved probably, like I said, probably too fast for the investment we've received. So we've done 1.2 million seed in 2018. That got us to 2020. 8 million in 2020. That got us to 2023.
Yeah.
And if you think about what was done in those first 4 years, we went from prototype that was a shelf to a full working prototype in 2 years. That working prototype cost me $650,000. So now you know how much I lived on for the rest of that. So very lean. The next 2 years, we deployed to Lend-Lease. We deployed a site at Canberra. We built a whole prototype site, pilot site, and then we deployed to City of Albury on 8 million, and built the team from 6 to 32. So still not a lot of humans for what we were trying to do. And then we raised 5 million.
Wow.
And that lasted a year and a half. Like, we've done very little amounts of investment, but big leaps. And I think there's arguments, right? You can go one way or the other, and hindsight's glorious. But at the time, it was just validate. And I think potentially you could argue I was a little led by the nose on, no, Olympia, I'll only come in when you've shown me this. Right? So there was a massive investor.
That's kind of where we need to get to.
If you do this, then we'll come. And so and so you're like chasing a bit of a sort of genie in a bottle situation at that point, because you're like, well, 4 of them now said that that's the thing.
Yeah.
So if we just do it, then, and the team have pulled off insane stuff. Like we picked up 6,000 tons of processing and moved it to Canberra because a site was opening late.
Wow.
And we did that in 3 weeks and turned it on. That from an infrastructure perspective, that's insane. Like that's so insane. But it caused an amazing amount of pressure on the team, lots of other fallout. And so, I think there's absolutely argument that we could have done a smaller scale out, smaller rollout, done it differently. But I think, again, that needle would have kept moving. The bars never, what we were chasing was belief, and belief is hard. And so I can't regret what we've done. What I know now is that when you look at us, you've got a company that has grown, to 7 sites in 4 states with
very little investment.
Very little investment. And that must matter, I think, as you move forward. So, I think you've just got to learn from that stuff. I don't, I like looking back on it because it's curious and you can think about different things and how they apply forward, but I don't necessarily regret. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, that would have been a better idea.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, who knows?
Who
right?
knows? Yeah.
So,
and I mean, what does the team look like? Like, because it feels like you spread across lots of different elements within the supply chain.
100%.
So what is the makeup?
Very interesting to a venture capitalist. So we are low on engineers from Stanford and scientists from ANU, and high on entry-level folks that are climbing the ranks. And so it's interesting. Waste as an industry is super cool. It's one of the only industries I've ever encountered where the CEO used to drive the truck or, the head of ops was a sweeper. Like there is this real interesting progression capability in waste, and you see it a lot. And so we experience that. So a lot of folks will come in at entry-level positions because what does an insect technician do? Who wants to stand on a waistline? Like those sorts of things are hard. And then we've got service technicians. So those tend to come from trade skilled backgrounds because they run the units, and there's obviously we need to keep iterating those and improving those. So there's lots of upgrades happening probably every quarter. And so those folks manage those units and do that work. We have the insect side, so people that process them and farm them. Our manufacturing has just rolled off, so we now manufacture with a company called Applied Engineering in Griffith, and they do all of that. But now we have a team that sort of does maintenance facilities and stuff like that. And then the senior exec team come from a little bit more predictable, so we have ex-C-suite waste people and some finance bankers just to keep everyone happy.
It's a really unusual makeup. I mean, it must be hard to find a lot of those people.
It's
not the bankers, but
it's an interesting thing, right? Like when you look at normal startups recruiting ads, it's like join innovative robotic, blah, blah, and everyone's like they'll come for that. That is not a motivator for probably about 40% of our staff. They want a reliable job that is an honest day's work that they can leave behind at the end of the day, that treats them right and has a place for them. And so they don't want any of the wishy-washy language actually detracts them because they think it's too fancy for them. And so you've got to manage the language a bit better. You don't want one ad to look different to another. So it's an interesting approach. You have different interests for staying in a job. So a lot of our folks can be transient or folks that don't hold jobs for very long and getting used to the idea that some of our roles will be people that just want to come for 4-6 months and then bugger off. That's okay. Just how do we make that work? And then we do have a really not in market large size of folks that work with disabilities in the business. And so again, trying to understand how that works for folks is interesting and difficult.
Awesome. Very cool. In terms of the brand, Goterra, like the name, where did all of that sort of happen?
2016, I was filling out a grant for 30 grand with Icon grants for the ACT, and I was like 2 minutes left for the name, and I'm like, Olympia's Maggots is not going to run. So I'm like trying to do a word mashup, and it's maggot, so G-O-T for the last bit of maggot, and era Canberra. So it's Maggot Canberra.
Maggot Canberra.
Yeah.
How does Canberra feel about that?
Hard to say. Mixed. Yeah.
Maggot Canberra Goterra. Yeah. Okay, wow. Okay,
not Go Earth in Latin, which most people think it is.
Yeah, interesting.
Just giving them way too much credit.
I love that. I mean, I feel like a lot of the naming stories are often... just happenstance of things. Weird, gooby things.
Yeah,
I mean, paper moose, we were drinking under a big cardboard moose head. You'd think a branding agency would be more structured, but we figured out processes and stuff later on. But,
You can't. It's got to be something like that.
Yeah.
It's when they're contrived, you can tell.
Yeah, well, we have an advertising version of it, like, paper moose, moose, it's a very... interesting animal. When you see it in the wild, you'll always remember it. Paper is about craft and craftsmanship, so paper moose makes perfect sense.
So it's synergistic.
But in reality, it was a lot of beers. And it's like, that seems about right. It was a bit left of field.
But it's still on brand, right? Like it came creatively out of nowhere, but you can back it up with some substantial
something
marketing.
Like that. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Ever, never.
And I guess so farming. What about the management side? I mean, how have you found that in terms of managing 30-something people? Like that's a whole other beast to itself.
Yeah, 67 now.
67. Wow.
I think again in startup land, when I first started, there was this like real interesting focus from VCs on the culture of the business, and I dived into that pretty full on, and we created sort of our culture and thought about what it would be to work at Goterra. I think what's interesting is the pressure to create a great culture creates an interesting, and I've seen this happen with startups that I mentor as well, where they're like so focused on the individual that they forget about the company, which means they in turn forget about the collective people outside of the individual. And then it all gets just messy, right? Where the founder or the CEO and the senior leadership team feel like they're responsible for everything. They're to be blamed for everything. They're you are the only person that can bequeath happiness to your team. Get them a kombucha bar at all costs, and you kind of lose sight of what you're actually building, which I think is part of what I've learned in this time. I created a company, which means I created a microcosm or a world, right? And it is the world according to Olympia because it's mine, right? And so I learned over time that a lot of the things where I was failing with getting it right, where I thought I was giving something, but I was actually creating a detractant or whatever, were when I was trying to cater to a belief of what people wanted. Instead of saying, I think a good workplace looks like this, and finding people that agreed with me. So one of the things I got chipped for by the AFR last year was I stood on a panel and I said, there is not a conventional sense of work-life balance at Goterra. And if you're looking for the conventional sense of work-life balance, you won't find it here. And everyone was like, wah. And I'm like, no. Work-life balance is I come in at 8, I leave at 4, I don't have to worry about work. I won't get asked to work after those hours. On the weekends, I'm not to myself and I'm done. That's fine. We can give you a balance a different way, which is you might come in at 8, something might break at 3, you might be there till 12, in which case you will get your overtime and you'll get tomorrow off. If we're in a crisis and you're in a team that believes that we're in a crisis, there's no work-life balance in a crisis. And so we kind of need folks that are happy that the balance comes at the diffidence to the need.
And that there's some reciprocal value exchange.
100%.
Yeah.
So the company isn't demanding without return, but also the company has needs people that want to engage with that kind of engagement. And that's an interesting challenge, right? Because work-life balance has become this sacred cow where we kind of have to give it, and it's like, I can't.
Yeah.
And so I might need you on the weekend.
Sometimes shit happens.
That's right. And so it took me a bit to get there because I was like, no, we can do work-life balance. And then it's like a weekend and I'm the only one answering the phone.
Where's my work-life balance? I'm the only one without
Someone
it.
needs to answer the phone. Yeah. And it's like, and then people on the Monday, everyone's like, the CEO shouldn't be answering the phone. And I'm like, who's answering the phone? And we're all just staring at each other. So, and that was me, right? I made that problem because I got caught up in good culture and I was failing at driving it. So I think, for me, we think about, I use Slack. I know a lot of people hate that tool, but for me, it's like work comms only happens on Slack.
Yep.
And that means you can then turn off. If work comms happens on SMS or phone calls, then you can never turn off. Yeah. And so for me, it's been that's been a rigid rule that as an example of where we fence work away from your personal life. If I want to turn off work, I only have to turn off one tool. I can keep my phone. Nobody's bothering me. It's okay. And just changing stuff like that to do a better job with folks. But we've got a very distributed team. We've got people from Adelaide through to Queensland and in Melbourne. Everybody's all over the place. And so everybody communicates very well and we do look after each other in that way, but we have a bit more of a fighting culture. So we're you
kind of need that, don't you? As a startup and scale up, like you're fighting for success and to win. And you have to have I guess everyone rallied around that vision of what you're trying to accomplish.
100%. But you also need to know that fighting for a long time is tiring and discouraging sometimes. And I think, again, where the culture perceptions are a challenge for startups is there's this staff retention really matters. And I'm like, how long does an engineer who's not a founder want to work on a problem that's hard in a light team with not a lot of money before they're like, that was fun. And I want to go and work for a big company now where it hurts less or I get to expand more or I'm not a generalist, I'm a specialist. And so, again, getting comfortable with folks being okay with them leaving, helping them stay if you can, having a better relationship with that movement, I think is also really important. Whereas startups, I think, try to keep everyone for years and they're like, 17 years, we've all been here. And I'm like, ooh. Yeah.
Is that good for anyone? Yeah. Have you all grown at the pace of the business?
Yeah. Forest for the trees much. You know? Like, how good is it when a new person comes on and goes, why are we doing it like that? That's dumb.
Fantastic.
And you're like, oh, I've never seen that.
I built this business from first principles. I need people like you to tell me that I'm doing something wrong.
So there's, I think some of that has been good to
natural
learn.
attrition. And I guess understanding where you exist in kind of the life cycle of people's careers as well.
And we've had some really great moments where that's happened. So, some farm techs that have gone on to work at Department of Ag or big agricultural pastoral companies, and engineers that have gone on to work for really big, larger firms with, and been able to climb the ranks there. And that, having them come early and say, hey, I want to try and go somewhere else.
Gives them that chance.
That felt awesome. And I was so proud that we'd created that opportunity. And so for me now, we talk about that a lot and try and make sure that, not everyone agree. Lots of people don't feel comfortable telling you that they're leaving, and so it doesn't work for everyone. But we've got enough stories of folks now where it's like, oh no, I think we've kind of got that built in. And
I've had a producer just a couple of months ago come to, he was with us for 6 years, and it was like, I think it's time. And I was like, okay,
how cool?
How can I help you? It wasn't like I'm leaving in 4 weeks.
No.
It was like several months, and we were able to find a replacement. It was really amicable, and we're able to help him move on as well.
But beautiful.
So it's like, that's a beautiful relationship.
Were you proud?
Yeah, I was like, it was. You're like, okay, we're doing something right.
100%.
If there's this mutual respect to that level. And I think that's all we can ask, really.
But how often do you think people actually
very rare
feel that that's? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that sits as a conscious approach to managing staff.
I'm quite open about it. this is great.
Yeah.
And I celebrate that.
Yeah.
Of like, please, if you feel like you've hit where your growth at the company, let us help you. We can help you, introduce you to other people or whatever it might be, because that's great for us and it's great for you.
Yeah.
I think it's super cool that you've had that experience as well. For me, it's like the proudest. It's been such a proud moment, and now we've just started. We've got 4 staff members that have come back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Which is that felt really good too.
Yeah, I've just had someone that's been away for 5 years and coming back.
How good?
Like, amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that we can be a place where someone once told me that you kind of you can have people for several years.
Yeah.
And it's like they're moving through the space, so you can give them the best possible experience that they can have.
Yeah.
But know that they will probably move on at some point. And that's okay.
I know. But I don't think that's actually the belief of many startups.
Yeah, we must have 99% retention.
Everyone stayed. Everyone, all of us, forever.
Yeah.
What does it mean if they leave?
I just don't think it's probably good, because people are also, particularly a startup, a startup is changing so rapidly
100%.
day to day.
Yeah.
The needs of the business are changing. And so the requirements of the types of people that you have in the business are so different.
Yeah. We did a review of staff last year, and we sort of plotted like folks onboarding, folks leaving, and every time, it didn't matter good or bad, engage or rationale or reason. Each time folks were moving on, you could legitimately see the role had gone like this.
Yeah.
And like whether or not they were the right person to keep going was, just very apparent that there was a marked difference in your job was generally this, and now it is specifically that, and it's just like that pinch feels.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
Like that feels like a different role.
Yeah. Well, and also
and I have to stretch to that.
Now it feels like failure, because when I started my job, I was really good at it. It was super easy, and now suddenly it's hard and sucks, and I'm struggling. I'm dropping balls, and it's like, oh, it's actually not you. It's just this beast we built. It's actually like you've done your job. It's working beautifully.
So well that we've kind of changed, and
now I need
the business
6
evolved.
of you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Someone that doesn't necessarily have your experience.
Yeah.
So something completely different. I guess, the whole podcast is about the mucky middle. So finding our balance through purpose and profit.
Yeah.
I guess, where have you had to make those tricky decisions of, you're very focused on your mission and the purpose of the business. Have you had to make sacrifices along the way? Yes.
That's an easy question. Yes, I have. Sacrifices. So as a business, I made a decision fairly early to say, the thing that doesn't exist in the world is this box thing.
Yeah.
Whatever I raise, if I sort of had this theory at the time, well, I still have it, and I believe it's the right one, that when you're making decisions in a startup like ours, you have to kind of very simplistically bucket things into 2 buckets. Can money solve this problem? Or does innovation solve this problem? Now, sometimes you get your buckets mixed up and you think you can just pay for the solution and you really needed to innovate it. And other times you think you can innovate it and you should have paid for it. And I think, that's just good luck with that. That's that they will call that scar tissue later on. And you will fondly recognize that you've got the scars to prove it. But largely what I decided was that the maggot in the box thing was the thing that had to be proven. Managing waste didn't have to be proven. The need to do that didn't have to be proven. That insects could be used as feed didn't have to be proven. That farmers would use it didn't have to be proven.
And the ability to process any kind of protein because it doesn't matter that it's a maggot, right? We turn chicken feathers into protein. So to take an input and use an agricultural process that already exists and make it a feed ingredient, that's not a proving thing.
Yep.
So I put my time and energy and my money into the box, which means when you look at Goterra today, there's so much validation at that end, but we have not validated from a sales perspective the protein and frass side. So even though we're 1,500% year-on-year growth, on protein and frass sales. We still haven't hit the industrial volumes that on my beautiful forecast that goes up and to the right makes everyone happy. And I had argued that at the time when I made the decision, and to investors, that would be self-evident, that having signed contracts would be validation enough, and that would then allow capital to be invested, because it's like, the customer's there, it's not an LOI, they've signed a contract, pay the money, here's what it costs, we know, because it's a selection thing. And there's no R&D. But that has proved difficult now, and so it is the sort of number one blocker for a lot of investors, where they look at it and they go, but you haven't validated these things. I'm like, here's $1.5 million in contracts, and they're like, but you haven't validated. I'm like, they're not LOIs, they're literal contracts. And they're like, when you validated it, and you're like, ooh, okay.
What is the definition of validation?
Well, I digest it as not actual validation so much as we're back to belief.
Right.
There's so few investors that understand agriculture. And so for them, they go, but will the farmers want it? I'm like, yes.
Here's the contracts.
And then will they use it? Yes, they're already used. And so it's an interesting piece. And then when I confidently say, but don't worry, there's a renderer down in Albury and they'll process for us and it only costs this much, they go, ooh, how does that work? And because again, it's not a usual approach for a startup to be plugging into all these external service providers. It starts
you want to own the whole stack.
And feels a bit messy and is that a collaboration? How does this work? And so for me, again, that's sort of if you want to characterize it, the mucky middle for us, where we'd made a strategic decision about where to put capital based on a belief of what needed to be believed. I don't think I've chosen the wrong thing. I think we are inherently a first of a kind company that is doing all the right things, but is engaging with the inherent challenges of being a first of a kind company. It's not supposed to be easy to bring these things to market. And I think, again, when we talk about folk and we talk about climate tech, we use examples like Tesla. And I argue that Tesla is not folk because the first car was electric and the car doesn't not look like a car. Sure, I can make my seat fart, but that in itself is not an innovation, right? And the vehicle on the road operates just like a vehicle, aside from a Cybertruck, which looks ridiculous. But, they're just
Shots
cars.
fired.
Well, had to put one in. Elon, if you're listening. But those things aren't truly, it is just a car. Right? And not to diminish Tesla or the innovation of Tesla.
If I buy a Tesla, I kind of know what I'm going to get.
I
can
steering
imagine
wheel
it,
on this
steering
side.
wheel, I put foot in the pedal, moves forward.
100%.
Yeah.
It's not, all you had to get people to believe was that people would want to buy one. It's a car. You didn't have to get them to believe that they'd buy a bubble made of saran wrap that propels them in a circular motion somewhere. And so I can't wail against the realities of what that challenge is, but it does mean that, like I said, the summits that you feel like you're getting to tend to be very tiny plateaus on a sheer cliff face, and so you've got to really find your way to a resilience around that. And I think, again, the backing yourself to the strategic decisions you're making have to be foundationally sound, or else you kind of just waver about and you're going, oh, maybe I didn't, maybe we should, and you get pulled about a bit too much. But yeah, I don't think that goes away.
No, unfortunately. But I guess, how do you manage that with yourself? We've talked about work-life balance and kind of where you pull energy from. You also seem to have a great sense of humor. What is your philosophy on kind of continuing to focus on this?
Yeah. I have done great sometimes and have not done great other times. So 2023, there's actually photos of me. I hadn't brushed my hair for 6 weeks or something. I was actually quite depressed and I was really struggling. I couldn't stop, and I didn't stop believing in what we were doing, but I was very lost on whether or not I felt like there was this sort of sense of justice had been lost in what we were able to achieve. The barriers we were sort of engaging with felt just rubbery. Like if you pushed on them, they just sort of bulged out the other side. You couldn't ever get a foothold to either progress or not progress. And then on top of that, I think when that's your experience, and then you really believe in your mission and you have a strong sense and can physically see what your tech is doing, that just feels uncontrollably shit. and so I kind of vacillate as to where I pull my source of strength from. Sometimes it just comes from me, and that's enough, and it's just sheer force of will, and in that time that's what it was. It was just like, I refuse for this to stop, and so therefore it will not. And that was all I had.
Just brute force.
Yeah, it was just velocity, and that's how we'll and that's not pretty to watch on anyone's side of the fence, and so it's difficult. But I think other times I get it a lot from our team. You got to get your stuff from wherever. I don't think you should I'm not one that's like, I meditate in the morning and then I start fresh. Like I don't, and you won't find me yoga bathing or ice bathing or doing what folks normally, like the stuff for themselves. Like I don't need that. I find work a privilege. I enjoy work. It's where I get my joy from. It's my triathlon or whatever. Like that's where I like to be. When I need to break it off from that and get a break, I ride a very difficult horse who is a challenge to ride, and so you can't focus on anything else but him, and so we have a wonderful time together, and him and I just sort of dial off. But
so you're non-stop on challenging things.
I don't. Yeah, well, but all
there's no
founders
lying by the beach. It's just challenge after challenge.
Murder me. I'm. It's not how my brain works.
Yeah.
Like I do like relaxing, don't get me wrong, but like I've got to be kind of at a point where I'm really actually bodily tired for that to be something that can happen. And it's just not where I get my joy. Like I live on a working farm now, an hour and a half from Canberra, and everyone's like, how are you doing that on your time off? And I'm like, this is also relaxing to me. If I had to sit still on a couch, I would want to forcibly remove my own skin. Like it just isn't where that comes from. And I think, again, there's so much pressure to like find your own space, and it's like, just find what works.
Yeah,
like, who
what makes you happy.
Yeah. If you want to take another job and work at a bar, knock yourself out.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's where I started.
Me too. Not at this age anyway.
Yeah. And I guess what advice would you give to other founders that are sort of just starting out?
Yeah, I think the pull to be what other folks need you to be is a hidden part of a startup journey, and it sits with investors, it sits with customers, it sits with staff. Yeah, and so I think for me that you built a world. You invented a world, you imagined a world, it's your world. And that sounds very singular, and Australians will be like, bleh. Like, that sounds very individualized. But I think if it is your world and you imagined it, then create that and
believe in it.
Yeah, and find out what it means for that world to exist, and then be purposeful in thinking about what kind of people would want to join that place and how you want it to operate, and then go out and find investors that believe in it and folks that want to join it. But don't try and create a world that others think you should create, because you lose, your idea just gets lost then in the noise of what others think it should be. And that is a different directive than taking great advice from good people on how you can improve your product. Caveat. Yeah.
I guess it's little measures of everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But being true to your vision of what you're creating.
There's a difference between like, hey, I don't think your market segment is Bob's Cafe. I think it's this, and I don't think maggot box in a box is a thing. You should do it a different way. Like,
or the way that you do that and the way that you treat people and all of that sort of thing.
100%.
That's the whole other thing.
That's right.
And I guess to wrap up, I guess what would you say to young Olympia, the aspiring farmer? What would you sort of say?
You're gonna have the best time. That'd be it.
Yeah, awesome. Love it. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Mucky Middle. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed having the conversation. If you did, please hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts, and if you feel so inclined, give us a review. It really helps other people discover the show and gives me a little dopamine hit as well. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email at nick@papermoose.com.
The Mucky Middle is a Paper Moose production. Music by Caleb Jacobs.